When a billionaire broke into his black maid's locked room, he found an old metal box. Inside were photos of himself spanning decades, and a letter that began with 7 chilling words. "You don't remember me, but I remember." The Langford estate was known for its spotless marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the quiet efficiency of its staff. But to Gregory Langford, a man whose fortune was built on high-stakes investments, it was simply a place to sleep between meetings. He rarely paid attention to the people who kept the house running. That changed the night he walked past Room 7. Room 7 belonged to Marlene, his maid for the past 5 years. She was a tall, middle-aged black woman with calm eyes and an unshakable sense of discretion. She never spoke unless spoken to, never asked for favors, never shared personal details. Gregory appreciated her efficiency, but never thought about her life beyond the polished silverware and pressed linens she left behind each morning. It was nearly midnight. Gregory had come downstairs for a glass of water when he heard an odd metallic sound from behind Marlene's door. Not the sound of cleaning tools or furniture shifting, but the unmistakable click of a lock being turned. He paused. The hall was silent again. Marlene's light was still on. He considered knocking, but instead continued toward the kitchen, telling himself it was none of his business. Yet something about the sound lingered in his mind. The next morning Marlene was her usual quiet self, moving between rooms with her crisp uniform and soft footsteps. But Gregory's curiosity had already taken root. He began noticing small details he'd never paid attention to before. How Marlene always locked her door when she left. How she carried a single brass key on a thin chain around her neck. How she never allowed the other staff inside her room. By the end of the week, curiosity had turned into suspicion. On Friday evening, Gregory returned from a business trip earlier than expected. The staff was still cleaning. Marlene's door stood ajar. She was nowhere in sight. Against his better judgment, Gregory stepped inside. Her room was small and meticulously clean. A neatly made bed, a single wooden chair, a dresser with no clutter. But in the far corner, partially hidden by a folded blanket, was a locked metal box. It was old, scratched and heavy, the kind of box that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. He crouched beside it. The lock was sturdy. He tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. His pulse quickened. Why would a maid need to keep something under lock and key in an employer's home? Before he could decide what to do, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Marlene entered, her eyes locking on the scene instantly. The shift in her expression was immediate and chilling. "Mr. Langford," she said slowly, her voice low. "That's not yours." Gregory straightened, trying to sound casual. "I was looking for you. I noticed this box. Thought it was unusual." She stepped forward, placing herself between him and the box. "It's private. I don't take anything from you, and I expect the same respect." Her tone was calm, but her eyes carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Gregory left the room, but the image of that locked box gnawed at him. All weekend, his mind ran wild. Was it money, jewelry, evidence of theft, or something more personal? By Monday, he had convinced himself he needed to know. That evening, while Marlene was out buying groceries, Gregory returned to her room with a set of universal keys from his safe. The lock resisted at first, but with a firm twist, it gave way. He lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of old photographs, neatly tied with string. At first, he assumed they were family portraits, but as he flipped through them, his breath caught. The photos were of him, not recent images from the estate, but old ones, some from decades ago, showing him as a young man at charity events, university ceremonies, even candid shots at public places. And in almost every photo, somewhere in the background, was a young black girl. Her face was the same in each image, though she grew older in later pictures. In one, she stood at the edge of a playground. In another, she watched from a distance at a graduation. Gregory's heart pounded. He didn't recognize the girl, but the sheer number of photos made it clear this was no coincidence. At the bottom of the stack was a folded letter, yellowed with age. His name was written on the front in careful handwriting. He hesitated, then unfolded it. The first line made his blood run cold. "You don't remember me, but I remember everything you did." Gregory froze, the words burning in his mind. His hands felt suddenly heavy as he read on. "You walked past me every day in that orphanage. You never saw me, but I saw you. You wore the good shoes. You had the visitors. They told me you were the donor who kept our lights on. I thought you were a hero, until the night I learned the truth." His chest tightened. The letter continued, written in sharp, deliberate strokes. "You funded the home, but you also decided which of us got out. You picked the boys who reminded you of yourself. The girls, especially the black girls, stayed. I stayed. I grew up there until I aged out. You left and I was forgotten." Gregory sank onto the edge of the bed. He didn't remember making any such decisions. He had been in his 20s when his father, the true philanthropist, ran that charity. Gregory had been present at a few events, nothing more. Or so he thought. The next paragraph cut deeper. "You gave a speech once about second chances. You looked me in the eye while I stood in the back. That night, the staff told me my application to join the boarding school program had been denied. I later found the note you signed." He felt his stomach twist. He searched his memory, but nothing came. Could he have signed something without knowing what it was? Had he been complicit in a decision that changed someone's life forever? The letter shifted tone. "I came to work here because I needed to see you. I needed to know if the man who cost me my future even remembered my face. You didn't, but I remembered yours. Every day I polished your floors, I asked myself if you'd ever recognize me. You never did. This box holds the years you erased. It's proof that I existed in your world before you looked away." Gregory set the letter down. His mouth was dry. The photos, the words, the quiet presence of Marlene. Over the years, it all formed a story he had never asked to hear, but now could not ignore. The sound of the front door closing jolted him. Footsteps approached. Marlene entered, her eyes moving instantly from his face to the open box. She didn't look angry. She looked resolved. "You read it," she said. Gregory swallowed. Yes." She stepped closer, her voice steady. "I didn't want revenge. I wanted you to know. You walk through life deciding things that change people forever. Sometimes you don't even realize what you've done." He tried to speak, but the weight of her gaze held him still. "I didn't keep these photos because I wanted to hold on to the pain," she continued. "I kept them so I'd never forget where I came from, and to remind myself that even the people who change our lives don't always mean to. But that doesn't erase the damage." Gregory felt a sharp, unfamiliar ache in his chest. If I hurt you, I am sorry. I was young. I didn't understand the power I had." Marlene nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I stayed. To see if you'd ever understand. Now you do." He looked at the photos again. Each one felt like a mirror to a past he had ignored. "What do you want me to do?" She studied him for a moment. "Do better. Not for me. For the next girl whose future rests on your decision. You have the power now to change stories before they're written." For the first time in years, Gregory felt his confidence crack. He had built his empire on calculated moves, never stopping to think about the lives behind the numbers. That night he returned the box to Marlene's room, but the letter stayed in his desk drawer. Weeks later, the Langford Foundation announced a new scholarship program for orphaned girls, prioritizing those who had been overlooked in the past. Gregory personally attended the first award ceremony. As the young women lined up to receive their scholarships, he saw Marlene in the back of the room, standing quietly with her arms folded. She didn't smile, but she nodded once. It was the smallest acknowledgement, yet for Gregory it was everything.